You still owe me that date. Natalie Brooks whispered it close enough that I felt her breath against my ear. For one ridiculous second, I was 18 again, standing beside the senior parking lot with a borrowed car, $23 in my wallet, and the terrifying hope that the prettiest girl at Westfield High might actually say yes to me. Except I wasn't 18. I was 28, hiding alone in the trophy hallway during our 10-year reunion, and Natalie was 27, wearing a dark green dress that made every intelligent thought leave my head. I turned slowly. You remember that? Her brown eyes held mine. Ethan Caldwell, I wore uncomfortable shoes and waited 47 minutes for you. Of course I remember. 47 exactly? I was angry. Angry people keep excellent records. Then she smiled, and there it was. The same small tilt at one corner of her mouth that had wrecked my concentration through most of senior year. From the gym behind us came the muffled sound of an early 2000s playlist, although none of those songs had been new when we graduated. Apparently, reunion committees believed nostalgia had flexible math. I glanced toward the double doors. Did you follow me out here to collect an old debt? I saw you escaping. I was taking a break. You loosened your tie while moving at the speed of a man fleeing a building. I'm a fast relaxer. She laughed, soft and familiar, and something tightened under my ribs. I hadn't seen Natalie in person since the afternoon before graduation. Back then, she'd been student council vice president, editor of the school paper, and the only person who could make a sarcastic comment sound kind. I'd been the quiet kid who designed sets for school plays and pretended I didn't watch for her every time a cafeteria door opened. Now I photographed buildings for an architecture firm in Chicago. It was a good job for someone who preferred empty rooms to complicated conversations. Buildings stayed where you left them. People rarely did. I'd almost skipped the reunion. My closest friend from school, Owen Price, had called 3 times and finally accused me of being emotionally afraid of a decorated gymnasium. He wasn't entirely wrong. Then I'd seen Natalie's name on the attendance page. I told myself it didn't influence my decision. I also bought a new jacket. She folded her arms. You disappeared before I could say hello. I saw you talking to people. That's generally what happens at reunions. You looked busy. I was waiting for you to stop pretending not to notice me. That landed harder than it should have. Inside the gym, someone cheered as the opening notes of a slow song came through the speakers. I recognized it immediately. Natalie did too. Our senior prom song. She looked toward the doors, then back at me. That's almost offensively convenient. I assume Owen bribed the DJ. Did he know you were going to hide near the trophy case? Owen assumes I'll hide near any object that can't ask personal questions. Natalie stepped closer and straightened my loosened tie. It was such an easy, intimate gesture that I forgot how breathing worked. Her fingers remained against the knot. You look good, Ethan. So do you. That sounded painful. It's been 10 years. I had a better sentence prepared. What happened to it? You walked over. Her expression changed, the teasing softened, leaving something warmer and far more dangerous. Well, she said quietly, that was almost smooth. Almost is my specialty. She looked down at my tie, still held lightly between her fingers. I heard you never married. I raised an eyebrow. We've moved from unpaid dates to a background check? Occupational habit. I'm a radio producer now. I research people. And what did your research say? That you work too much, rarely post anything personal, and once gave an interview about train station restoration that was somehow less exciting than the train station. You listened to that? All 18 minutes. Why? Her gaze came back to mine. Maybe I wanted to hear your voice. The noise from the gym seemed to recede. Natalie had always been confident, but this wasn't casual confidence. There was vulnerability beneath it. A quiet gamble she was letting me see. I should have met her there with the truth. Instead, old guilt got there first. Natalie, about that night, I know why you didn't come. My throat tightened. 9 hours before our planned date, my mother had collapsed in our kitchen from a brain aneurysm. My father and I had followed the ambulance to the hospital, and by the next morning, the life I understood was gone. Mom survived, but she needed months of rehabilitation. Dad took leave from work, money became a daily emergency, and we moved to my aunt's place 2 states away before summer ended. I didn't handle any of it well, especially Natalie. I found out from Owen, she said. Not that night, a few weeks later. I should have called. Yes. I tried once, and hung up before I answered. I stared at her. How did you know that was me? You were the only person I knew with an Oregon area code. That one call had happened at 2 a.m. from my aunt's kitchen. The moment Natalie answered, I'd panicked and disconnected. At 18, grief had convinced me silence was less humiliating than letting her hear me fall apart. At 28, I knew better. I was ashamed, man, I said. Not of my mom, of myself. Everything was out of control and I didn't know how to explain why I'd vanished. You could have started with hello. I know. She released my tie, but she didn't step away. I was furious for a while, she admitted. Then I learned what happened, and I felt terrible for being furious. After that, too much time passed. You went to college in Oregon. I moved to New York. Every year, reaching out felt stranger. I looked you up. Her eyebrows rose. How often? There was no dignified answer, so I gave her the honest one. Whenever something good happened. Natalie went very still. I'd get a promotion, I continued, or photograph something I was proud of, and I'd wonder what you were doing. I never contacted you because I figured you had a full life and didn't need some guy from high school arriving with a 10-year-old apology. You decided that for me? Yes. That was considerate and incredibly annoying. I've matured unevenly. She laughed, but her eyes had turned bright. The slow song continued in the gym. A few couples drifted past the hallway entrance, but no one bothered us. Natalie extended her hand. Dance with me. In the hallway? You owe me 47 minutes. I'm collecting the first 4 now. I looked at her open hand, then took it. She led me beneath the faded championship banners near the gym doors. There was no dance floor there, only polished tile and an old display case full of trophies. But when I put one hand at her waist and she rested hers on my shoulder, the location stopped mattering. She fit against me with an ease that felt less like nostalgia and more like discovering we had interrupted something 10 years earlier. You're shaking, she murmured. I haven't done this since prom. You danced at prom? I stood near a speaker and shifted my weight. I remember, it was brave, I smiled. Are you seeing anyone? Natalie leaned back just enough to study me. That took you nearly 4 minutes. I was building momentum. No, I'm not seeing anyone. Relief moved through me before I could hide it. She noticed. Her fingers tightened slightly at my shoulder. And you? No. Good. The song ended, but neither of us moved. I could smell her perfume, something warm with a hint of citrus. Her face was inches from mine, and for the first time all night, neither of us reached for a joke. I'm sorry I left you waiting, I said. I'm sorry you went through all that alone. I don't want pity. Good, because that isn't what this is. Her gaze dropped briefly to my mouth, then returned to my eyes. That single glance did more to me than 4 years of teenage fantasizing ever had. What is it? I asked. Natalie stepped away, but only far enough to reach into her purse. She pulled out her phone and held up the screen. It showed a reservation for 2 at a small Italian restaurant downtown. The time was 20 minutes away. I looked from the phone to her. You made a reservation? Yesterday. You didn't know I'd agree. I didn't know you'd come. That was the bigger gamble. My heart gave one hard, unmistakable beat. Natalie slipped her phone back into her purse, then held out her hand again. I didn't come to this reunion for the people in that gym, Ethan, she said. I came because your name appeared on the list. Then she smiled, nervous and hopeful at the same time. So tell me, are you finally taking me on that date? Part 2. I looked at Natalie's outstretched hand. 10 years ago, I'd wanted that date so badly I'd rehearsed conversation topics in my bedroom mirror. Now I knew life could derail a plan between one heartbeat and the next. But fear had already taken enough from me. I laced my fingers through hers. Yes. Her smile appeared slowly. Yes? I'm finally taking you on that date. Good, because the reservation required a credit card. I laughed as she pulled me toward the exit. Nothing says romance like a cancellation fee. Financial pressure is what brought us together. We slipped out before anyone could stop us. At the parking lot, I instinctively headed toward my rental car, but Natalie tugged me in the opposite direction. The restaurant is 3 blocks away. You're making me walk? You kept me waiting 10 years. Be grateful I didn't book something uphill. Downtown Westfield had changed since we were teenagers. The video store was now a yoga studio. The pharmacy had become a craft brewery. But the sidewalks were the same uneven brick, and Natalie still walked quickly enough that I had to lengthen my stride. Her hand remained in mine. You really planned this yesterday? I asked. Booked the table, checked the menu, and researched whether you had any alarming dietary restrictions. How thorough. You ate nothing but cheese fries in high school. I wasn't sure you'd survived. I occasionally ate pizza. That's cheese fries on bread. At Bellini's, the hostess led us to a small table by the front window. A candle flickered between us, casting warm light over Natalie's face. It was unmistakably a date. That realization made me nervous in a way the reunion hadn't. The hallway had belonged to our past. This table belonged to whatever happened next. Natalie opened the menu. We need rules. We do? No job interview questions. No asking where I see myself in 5 years. That eliminates my entire list. And we each get one question the other person has to answer honestly. 1? For now. The waiter brought wine. Natalie raised her glass. To overdue plans. I touched mine to hers. And angry people with excellent records. She smiled over the rim. Dinner began lightly. She told me about producing a morning radio program in New York, which meant waking at 3:30 and persuading opinionated hosts not to insult guests before sunrise. I told her about photographing abandoned theaters and restored stations. Do you still draw? She asked. Sometimes. In high school, I'd filled sketchbooks with buildings, stage designs, and, embarrassingly, Natalie's profile. She'd caught me once and assumed I was drawing the window behind her. I never corrected her. What do you draw now? She asked. Places I don't want to forget. Something in my answer made her pause. The waiter delivered our food. We ate, traded stories, and gradually stopped talking about careers. She told me her parents had divorced during her sophomore year of college. I admitted I'd nearly dropped out twice to return home, even after Mom regained most of her independence. Is she okay now? Natalie asked. She uses a cane. Her speech gets tangled when she's tired, but she's stubborn enough to frighten medical professionals. I always liked her. She liked you too. Natalie blinked. She knew who I was. She knew everything about you. A faint blush warmed her cheeks. What exactly did you tell her? That I'd asked out a girl who was completely beyond my league. I was not beyond your league. You barely knew I existed until senior year. She set down her fork. Ethan, you built the newspaper staff new storage shelves because I complained once that the old ones were collapsing. I needed community service hours. You had already completed them. I stared at her. She leaned across the table. I knew you existed. The candlelight reflected in her eyes. You get your honest question, she said. I had dozens. Why hadn't she contacted me? Had there been someone serious? Had she thought about me even half as often as I'd thought about her? But one mattered most. Why did you say yes back then? Her expression softened. Because I wanted you to ask. No, I mean, I know what you mean. She took a breath. You were quiet, but you noticed people. When I was overwhelmed, you'd appear with coffee and pretend you'd bought an extra one. You listened when everyone else was waiting for their turn to talk. And whenever you did say something funny, you looked surprised that I laughed. I couldn't look away from her. I had a crush on you, Ethan, she said. A serious one. For how long? That sounds like a second question. Natalie. Junior year. I leaned back, stunned. You dated Colin Avery junior year. For 6 weeks. He spent most of that time explaining his protein intake. You went to prom with him. He was my friend's cousin, and I spent the entire night watching you shift your weight beside a speaker. My laugh came out disbelieving. I wasted an astonishing amount of time. We both did. Her hand rested on the table between us, palm up. I placed mine over it. Your turn, I said. Ask me anything. She studied our joined hands. If your mom hadn't gotten sick, what do you think would happen that night? I would have picked you up at 8. We'd have gone to Marlowe's diner because it was all I could afford. I would have ordered coffee even though I hated it because you drank it. I still do. I know. Then I would have driven you home very slowly while trying to gather the courage to kiss you. Her thumb moved across my knuckles. Would you have? Probably not. Honest. I was terrified of you. You're not terrified now? I looked at her across the candlelit table. I'm trying not to be. Her eyes dropped to my mouth again. The waiter appeared with the check at exactly the wrong moment. Natalie sat back, amused. Saved by excellent service. I didn't need saving. No. I paid before she could argue. Outside, the air had cooled and the sidewalks shone from a light rain that had passed during dinner. Instead of returning directly to the school, Natalie turned down Maple Street. Where are we going? You'll see. 2 blocks later, we stopped before what had once been Marlowe's diner. The neon sign was gone. The building now held a bookstore closed for the night, but I recognized the wide front window and red tile around the entrance. Natalie stood beneath the awning. This is where I waited. Guilt twisted in my chest. I'm sorry. I know, I didn't bring you here to punish you. Then why? Because I don't want tonight to become another unfinished story. She took a step closer. I've imagined seeing you again, she said. Sometimes I told you off. Once I threw a drink on you. Was it at least a cheap drink? Very expensive. I wanted you to understand the severity. And the other times? Her teasing disappeared. The other times, you kissed me. Every sound on the street seemed to fade. I lifted a hand and touched her cheek. She leaned into my palm, not accidentally, not cautiously, but like she had already decided. Tell me if this is only nostalgia, I whispered. It isn't. Tell me if I'm moving too fast. You're 10 years late. I kissed her. For the first second, it was gentle, almost careful. Then Natalie gripped the front of my jacket and kissed me back, and every restrained thought I'd carried through dinner vanished. I slid my arm around her waist, drawing her closer. She rose onto her toes beneath the narrow awning, while rainwater dripped from its edge beside us. When we finally separated, her forehead rested against mine. That, she said breathlessly, was worth at least 20 minutes of the debt. Only 20. I'm including interest. I smiled and kissed her again, shorter this time, but no less certain. Then she stepped back, still holding my lapels. I fly to New York tomorrow afternoon, she said. Reality returned with brutal efficiency. And I live in Chicago, I said. I'm aware, I did research. I tried to smile, but she saw through it. This doesn't have to end tonight, she said. What are you asking? I'm asking whether you want a second date. A real one, not another reunion someday when we're 40. I took both her hands. When? Next Friday? In New York? She shook her head. Chicago. You're coming to Chicago? I have a meeting there Monday. I changed my flight so I can arrive Friday instead. You changed it before tonight? A trace of uncertainty crossed her face. I was hoping. For the first time, I understood how much courage this night had cost her. She hadn't simply found me in a hallway. She had taken a risk I'd spent 10 years avoiding. So I made my choice without hedging. I want the second date, I said, and the third. I want enough dates that we stop counting how late the first one was. Her eyes brightened. That's a dangerous promise. I'm done disappearing. Natalie kissed me once, softly. Then she whispered against my lips. Good. Because that meeting in Chicago isn't just a meeting. I pulled back. She held my gaze. It's a final interview, she said, for a job that would move me there. Part 3, a job in Chicago? I repeated. Natalie nodded. Senior producer for a nationally syndicated show. Did you apply because you knew I lived there? I applied 3 months ago, before the reunion committee even posted the guest list. Relief came first, followed by embarrassment that I'd needed the clarification. Why didn't you tell me at dinner? Because tonight was about us. I didn't want you wondering whether I was interested in you or interested in having a familiar face in a new city. And which is it? She touched the front of my jacket, looking up at me beneath the bookstore awning. I've been interested in you since junior year. I kissed her again. By the time we returned to the school, the reunion was nearly over. We exchanged numbers beside her car, which felt absurd after kissing, like we were trying to recover a lost decade. Text me when you get back to your hotel, I said. She smiled. Already worried about me? I'm establishing expectations. Then text me when you reach yours. You first. Very mature. Neither of us walked away. Natalie opened her car door, then looked back at me. Friday. Friday. Don't disappear. The words were lightly spoken, but I heard what lay beneath them. I won't. I texted before she did. For the next 6 days, we talked constantly. At first, we tried to maintain reasonable boundaries. A few messages in the morning, a call after work, no dramatic declarations based on 1 date and 2 kisses beneath a bookstore awning. By Tuesday, she was sending me photographs of terrible coffee from the radio studio at 4 in the morning. By Wednesday, I called during lunch just to hear her laugh. Thursday night, we talked until after midnight. What do you have planned for tomorrow? She asked. If I tell you, it won't be a surprise. I dislike surprises. You booked our first date without telling me. That was strategic romance. So is this. There was a pause. Ethan? Yeah? I'm excited to see you. The simple honesty made my chest ache. So am I. On Friday, I reached O'Hare 40 minutes early. Natalie came through the terminal wearing jeans, boots, and a tan coat, her hair loose around her shoulders. The moment she saw me, she smiled and walked faster. I'd planned to greet her calmly. Instead, I met her halfway, wrapped my arms around her, and lifted her off the floor. She laughed against my neck. This is unexpectedly enthusiastic. I'm establishing expectations. When I put her down, she kept her arms around me. Are you going to kiss me, or was that only permitted in our hometown? I answered by kissing her in the middle of the terminal. The week apart disappeared. Her hand slid into my hair and mine settled at her waist. Someone maneuvering a suitcase around us muttered something pointed, but Natalie only smiled against my mouth. Chicago seems friendly, she said. Ignore him. He's jealous. My plan for our second date was the date I would have designed at 18 if I'd had money and confidence. First, I took her to a cafe overlooking the river. You remembered I drink coffee, she said. I once drank an entire cup despite hating it. Yes, and made the face of a man taking medicine. Afterward, we walked through the restored Union Arcade, one of my firm's recent projects. The building had once been a train terminal. Now, afternoon light poured through the glass ceiling onto white stone and brass railings. Natalie tipped her head back. This is beautiful. I photographed it for the reopening. She glanced at me. Is this the station from your boring interview? The interview was boring. The station is innocent. She took my hand. Show me your favorite part. I led her up to the empty second-floor gallery. From there, we could see the whole concourse, the arched windows reflected in the polished floor. When I first came to Chicago, I used to sit here, I told her. It was abandoned then. The roof leaked and pigeons owned most of the upper level. Why come here? Because someone still believed it could be restored. She looked at me instead of the building. What? I asked. Nothing. That isn't a nothing expression? She moved closer. I was thinking this is a very Ethan place to love. Damaged and full of birds? Quiet, overlooked, worth staying for. Her hand rose to my cheek. I kissed her slowly without urgency this time. There was something more intimate about standing with her in a place I'd once gone to be alone. She leaned into me, trusting me with her weight. and I held her while sunlight warmed the gallery around us. When we separated, I rested my forehead against hers. I missed you, I admitted. It was 6 days. I know. I missed you too. We had dinner at a tiny restaurant near my apartment. Afterward, neither of us mentioned her hotel until we were standing outside in the cold. My reservation exists, she said. It does. My suitcase is at your apartment. It is. We could retrieve it. We could. She watched me struggle, then smiled. Or I could stay. Every cautious instinct I possessed started listing reasons to slow down. We lived in different cities. She hadn't completed her interview. We had history, but history wasn't the same as knowing each other now. Then Natalie slid her fingers between mine. I'm not asking for a promise about the rest of our lives, she said. I'm choosing tonight. I looked at her. And tomorrow? Her expression softened. I'd like to choose that too. I brought her home. Inside my apartment, she wandered past framed photographs of stations, theaters, and old libraries. There are no people in any of these, she observed. I photograph architecture. Convenient. I knew what she meant. Buildings couldn't disappoint me. Empty rooms didn't ask me to stay. Natalie stopped before my drafting table. An open sketchbook lay beneath the lamp. I reached for it too late. She turned to the latest page. It was her. I'd drawn her from memory after our Thursday call, laughing, head tilted, one hand pressed to her chest. You still do this? She asked. Not usually. How many? I didn't answer. She flipped back. There she was in several quick sketches. At the restaurant beneath the awning, standing in the trophy hallway. Then older drawings recopied years ago from a high school sketchbook I'd lost during the move to Oregon. Natalie's eyes filled. I thought you forgot me. Never. She closed the book carefully. Come here, she whispered. I did. She kissed me with one hand at the back of my neck, and there was no teasing in it now. Only tenderness and 10 years of being wrong about each other. I held her face between my hands. Stay. Yes. That night belonged to us, not to the people we'd been at 18, but to the adults we had become. We talked in the dark until conversation gave way to kisses. And kisses became something deeper. When I woke before sunrise, Natalie was asleep with her cheek against my chest and her hand curled over my heart. For once, waking beside someone didn't make me want to protect my solitude. It made me want morning to wait. We spent the weekend together. I showed her my neighborhood, introduced her to the bakery owner who kept trying to sell me day-old croissants, and cooked a dinner that proved my diet had progressed beyond cheese fries. But Sunday evening, I found Natalie by the apartment window, staring at the city lights. Nervous about tomorrow? I asked. A little. You'll be brilliant. And if I get it, then Chicago gets better. She turned. You keep saying things like that. What things? Chicago gets better if you move here, if you take the job. She crossed the room. You never say what you want. I felt the old reflex rise, the instinct to make myself easy to leave. What I want shouldn't decide your career. It won't. But I still want to know. She stood directly in front of me, refusing to let me retreat behind a practicality. So I gave her the truth. I want you here, I said. I want ordinary Tuesdays with you. I want your terrible studio coffee in my kitchen and your shoes by my door. I want the chance to find out what this becomes. Natalie's eyes shone. That's what I wanted you to say. I drew her into my arms. She held me tightly, and when she kissed me, it felt less like recovering the past and more like choosing a future. On Monday afternoon, I waited for news. At 5:13, someone knocked. Natalie stood outside my apartment, still wearing her interview clothes. Her expression was unreadable. They offered me the job, she said. I pulled her inside and kissed her. For one perfect second, she kissed me back. Then her hands pressed gently against my chest. Ethan, wait. Her voice shook. New York made me a counteroffer. I went still. She swallowed. And it's the job I've wanted my entire career. Part 4. The job you've wanted, I repeated. Natalie nodded. Executive producer of the morning show, full creative control, a larger team, national distribution. That's incredible. It is? Then you should take it. The words came automatically. Sensible, supportive, cowardly. Natalie's face changed. Just like that? You said it's your dream job. And Chicago? They offered you a good position, but if New York is what you've always wanted, I'm not asking you to compare salaries. What are you asking? She looked away. I don't know. I did. She wanted me to tell her that I wanted her here. I'd said it the night before when wanting her had been theoretical. Now there was a cost attached. I can't ask you to sacrifice your career for someone you've been dating for 10 days, I said. Then don't. Natalie, you keep acting as if the only options are deciding for me or pretending you have no feelings. I do have feelings. Then why are you standing 6 feet away? I hadn't realized I'd backed across the room. That physical distance exposed me more effectively than anything she could have said. I moved toward her, but she lifted a hand. No, not because I pointed it out. Frustration rose beneath my guilt. What do you want from me? I want you to stop preparing for me to leave. I'm trying to make this easier. For whom? Neither of us spoke. She picked up her purse. I'm going to my hotel. You don't have to. I need to think, and you clearly need space to make everything easier. That isn't fair. No, Ethan, you disappearing after graduation wasn't your fault. But this? Her voice softened. This is you disappearing while I'm standing right in front of you. The door closed behind her. I remained in the silent apartment, telling myself not to follow. She needed time. Pursuing her would add pressure. We had spent 1 week together after 10 years apart. Mature adults did not rearrange their lives based on 2 dates and a high school crush. Every argument sounded reasonable. They also sounded exactly like the arguments that had kept me alone. I looked around my apartment. Her coffee cup was beside the sink. Her scarf hung over a chair. The sight of those ordinary things hurt more than the closed door. I'd told Natalie I wanted ordinary Tuesdays with her. Then, the moment that desire required something from me, I had retreated behind practicality. My phone rang. For one hopeful second, I thought it was her. It was my mother. You sound miserable, she said after I answered. Hello to you too. You only answer on the first ring when something's wrong. I met someone. Is that the wrong thing? No, it's Natalie. Silence. Then Mom said, Newspaper Natalie? I laughed despite myself. How do you remember that? You drew her 70 times. It was not 70. Your father counted. I sat on the edge of the couch. She was offered her dream job in New York. And you're in Chicago? Yes. What did you tell her? To take it. Mom sighed. I was being supportive. You were being scared. That too. Her speech slowed when she was tired, but every word was clear. When I got sick, you learned that loving someone means they can be taken from you. So you started leaving first. I closed my eyes. I don't know how to ask her to stay without being selfish. Don't ask her to stay. That was my plan. Ask her to let you come along. I looked toward the window. The city stretched beyond it, all lights and distance. After we hung up, I opened my laptop. Not to search for apartments in New York or compose a resignation letter. Natalie didn't need an impulsive gesture that made her responsible for my entire future. She needed evidence that I meant to remain in it. I checked flight schedules, my work calendar, and the unused vacation days I'd accumulated by treating free time as a character flaw. Then I called Owen. I need the name of the hotel where the reunion committee booked rooms. He gave it to me, along with several questions I ignored. 20 minutes later, I stood outside Natalie's hotel room holding my laptop and a paper bag from the bakery near my apartment. She opened the door, wearing a hotel robe, her makeup washed away. Her eyes were red. If those are apology croissants, she said, that's manipulative. They're day old. I didn't have time to buy fresh manipulation. Her mouth twitched, but she didn't invite me inside. I'm sorry, I said. For telling me to take the job? For acting like you're taking it means we're already over. She leaned against the doorframe. Doesn't it? No. Chicago and New York aren't exactly neighboring suburbs. They're a 2-hour flight apart, I checked. Of course you did. I also have 26 vacation days. You have 26? I don't enjoy leisure. I've noticed. I opened the laptop. On the screen was a calendar covering the next 3 months. Several weekends were marked in alternating colors. I can come to New York in 2 weeks, I said. You come here 2 weeks after that if you can. In between we call, not only when it's convenient. We plan actual dates, even if some happen through a screen. She stared at the calendar. At the end of 3 months, we talk about what's working, I continued. Maybe you love the job. Maybe you hate it. Maybe my firm has an East Coast project. Maybe we decide distance is awful and one of us makes a change because it's right, not because we panicked after 10 days. You made a schedule. I also researched airline reward programs. That's disturbingly romantic. I considered buying flowers, but they lacked logistical substance. Her smile faded into something tender. Why are you doing this now? Because you were right. I was preparing for you to leave. She looked down. I set the laptop and croissants on the floor, leaving nothing between us. I can't promise distance will be easy, I said, but I can promise I won't disappear when it gets difficult. And I'm not asking you to choose Chicago. What are you asking? Choose us. Her eyes filled. I don't know what us looks like yet, she whispered. Neither do I. I want to find out. And if it doesn't work, then we face that together. We don't decide it failed before we try. Natalie stepped into the hallway. I was so angry with you, she said. I know. I had an entire speech ready. Can I hear it? No, it was excellent and you don't deserve it. That seems fair. She touched my face. You really want to do long distance? No, I want you. Long distance is simply the inconvenient location where you'll be. A tear slipped down her cheek even as she laughed. I brushed it away. I'm falling in love with you, I said. The confession frightened me more than asking her out at 18 ever had. There was no cleverness to hide behind, no promise she would answer the way I wanted. Natalie stared at me. Then she took my face in both hands and kissed me. I pulled her close and she wrapped her arms around my neck. The kiss was emotional and a little desperate, an apology and an agreement spoken without words. When we separated, she pressed her forehead to mine. I'm falling in love with you too, she whispered, which is terrifying and badly timed. I've never had good timing. No, you really haven't. I carried the laptop and croissants inside. We sat cross-legged on the bed, adjusting the calendar. She pointed out that radio schedules did not respect weekends. I admitted my firm occasionally sent me away with little notice. We argued over which city had better pizza and agreed that video call dinners could not include either person answering work email. It wasn't a fairy tale solution. It was a plan. The next morning, Natalie called New York and accepted the promotion. At the airport, I held her until the final boarding announcement. 2 weeks, she said. I'll be there Friday at 6. 6:15, probably. Your flight has terrible on-time statistics. You researched it? I research people I'm falling in love with. She kissed me, then slipped something into my palm. It was a key. My apartment has a difficult lock, she said. Turn this left, pull the door toward you, then turn it right. You're giving me a key already? I'm establishing expectations. Her flight was called again. Natalie walked toward security, then turned back. Ethan. Yeah? This counts as me leaving, not you. I know. And I'm coming back. So am I. She smiled and disappeared into the crowd. I closed my hand around her key. For the first time in 10 years, goodbye didn't feel like an ending. The first 3 months were not easy. They were worth it. Natalie's show began before sunrise, while my workdays often ended after dark. Some evenings, our video dates consisted of her eating dinner while I edited photographs. Other nights, I woke at 4 just to call while she rode to the studio. Every 2 weeks, one of us got on a plane. In New York, she took me to a 24-hour diner after her Saturday show. Coffee? She asked. I still hate it. She ordered me hot chocolate and kissed me across the table. In Chicago, I photographed her standing in the Union Arcade Gallery. She accused me of adding a person to an architectural image. You improved the composition, I said. Almost smooth. We had our first real argument 6 weeks in. A storm canceled my flight to New York. By the time I found another route, I'd already missed the dinner she had planned. I called from the airport, frustrated and exhausted. Forget it, Natalie said. Stay home. The old version of me would have heard rejection and withdrawn. Instead, I asked, do you mean that, or are you hurt? There was a long silence. I'm hurt. I'm sorry. I know it isn't your fault. That doesn't mean you can't be disappointed. She exhaled. I set the table. I even bought flowers. For yourself? You weren't going to think of them. Accurate. We stayed on the phone for 2 hours. She ate the dinner she'd made while I consumed airport pretzels. It wasn't the evening either of us wanted, but we didn't let disappointment become distance. The following morning, I boarded the first available flight. When Natalie opened her apartment door, I held up a crushed bouquet from an airport shop. Her eyes filled. Those are terrible. They endured a complicated journey. She pulled me inside by my coat and kissed me before I could put down my bag. We learned each other beyond high school memories. I learned that Natalie sang when she cooked, but only knew half the lyrics. She learned I couldn't sleep with the closet door open. I learned she needed 10 quiet minutes after a difficult show before talking about it. She learned that when I was worried, I cleaned everything within reach. Most importantly, we learned how to stay. At the end of our 3-month trial, we met in New York for the conversation we had promised to have. Natalie sat across from me at her kitchen table with our calendar between us. I hate airports, she announced. I hate your couch. You chose it. I was distracted by you in sweatpants. She fought a smile. We're attempting a serious conversation. I'm serious about the sweatpants. She reached across the table and took my hand. Are you happy? Yes. Even with all this is temporary. Her fingers stilled. What does that mean? I stood and held out her coat. It means I have something to show you. 20 minutes later, we stopped outside the Century Broadcast Hall in Midtown. The Art Deco building had been empty for years, its stone facade darkened by age. Natalie looked up. I've passed this place 1,000 times. My firm won the restoration contract. She turned toward me. They needed someone to document the project, I continued. Someone who understands historic theaters and train stations. Someone like you? Specifically me. Her eyes widened. Ethan. I proposed an East Coast position. They approved it on Friday. You're moving to New York? If you still want me here. She stared at the building again, then at me. Did you do this for me? Yes. Concern entered her expression. And for myself, I added, I've spent years photographing other people's restorations. This project lets me direct the entire visual archive. It's a step forward, not a sacrifice. But you love Chicago. I do. Moving doesn't erase that. What about your apartment, your friends? Owen is already planning to visit too often. My lease ends in 2 months, and my mother told me she'd disown me if I used her as an excuse to stay. Natalie laughed through gathering tears. I took both her hands. I'm not moving because I'm afraid of losing you, I said. I'm moving because I love you, and I want to build a life where we don't have to calculate the distance between us. You love me? I have for longer than I knew how to name it. She rose onto her toes and kissed me beneath the Century's weathered marquee. Pedestrians flowed around us. A taxi honked. Somewhere behind us, a construction crew unloaded scaffolding. Natalie pressed her face against my neck. I love you too, she whispered. 2 months later, I moved into an apartment 3 blocks from hers. She had offered to let me move in, but we decided not to rush every step simply because we had once lost time. That decision lasted 5 months. Then a pipe burst above my kitchen while I was away for work. Natalie arrived to help and found me ankle deep in water. You know, she said, surveying the damage, my apartment is very dry. Are you propositioning me during a plumbing emergency? I'm suggesting a practical consolidation of resources? With romantic intent? She stepped into the water, wrapped her arms around my neck, and kissed me. Extremely romantic intent. By our first anniversary, we shared her apartment, although she claimed the closet distribution remained under negotiation. My photographs covered the walls, and for the first time, many of them contained people. Mostly one person. A year after that reunion, we returned to Westfield for my mother's birthday. On Saturday morning, I told Natalie we were going for coffee. "You hate coffee," she reminded me. "I've matured unevenly." The bookstore occupying the old Marlowe's diner had added a cafe. I reserved the table beside the same wide window where Natalie had waited for me at 18. She recognized it immediately. "You're not subtle," she said as we sat. "I was hoping you'd appreciate the symbolism. I'm a producer. I appreciate anything that gives a story a satisfying ending." I ordered hot chocolate. She ordered coffee. Then I placed a small velvet box between us. Natalie stopped breathing. "I owed you one date," I said, "but one was never going to be enough." Her eyes filled as I moved around the table and knelt. People nearby began to notice, but I saw only her. "You were the first person who made me want to be brave enough to stay," I said. "You're still the person I want to tell whenever something good happens. Natalie Brooks, will you let me spend the rest of my life taking you on overdue dates?" She laughed and cried at the same time. Yes, I barely managed to put the ring on before she pulled me up and kissed me. "Angry people keep excellent records," she whispered. "And fiancés? We charge interest." We married the following spring in the Union Arcade beneath the restored glass ceiling. Mom walked with me into the gallery using her cane in one hand and gripping my arm with the other. Owen gave a speech in which he accepted full credit for our relationship because he had forced me to attend the reunion. Natalie wore white and walked toward me through the place I had once visited when I needed to believe ruined things could be restored. But our story wasn't about recovering what we'd lost. It was about